Today on the show is Cameron Murray. Cameron is the founder of Venture Talent. You always put out great content in the recruiting space, building a LinkedIn presence, just keeping it very honest and real about what it's like to be a startup recruiter.
People think of recruiting as you just DM people on LinkedIn, they respond to you, and then you just have a simple conversation and that's it. That's like the exact opposite of what I think what recruiting is. That's not at all what I do all day long.
There is no agentic process that can do what I just explained. Candidates don't use agentic AI in their iPhone. They don't use agentic AI for their Google Calendar, for their lifestyle operations. I don't know. Why do you think scheduling is so important? And do you think that's a future we're going to see in the next couple of years?
What problem are they really trying to solve? You're supposed to be the one with the solution. It's when I go to a mechanic, I don't know what's wrong. Like, can you fix it for me? The goal is for them to trust you. If he's saying that's a solution to my hiring problem, I'm going to trust him.
All right, what's up, everybody? Today on the show is Cameron Murray. Cameron is the founder of Venture Talent, somebody who I met on the internet who would just truly be one of those real-life homies. We bonded over just typical millennial bro dad things. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, it's great. Where are you based? What are you working on?
I'm based in the Portland area, and all I do is go-to-market recruiting for early stage, typically seed to B startups.
Love that. Yeah, I feel like you always put out great content in the recruiting space, building a LinkedIn presence, just keeping it very honest and real about what it's like to be a startup recruiter. Why early stage? You could do anything in this world. Why recruiting?
Yeah, I worked for Amazon for a bit, and that is the polar opposite of early stage. And I hated every bit of it. Too many systems and processes in place in order to just do an outreach, right? And I enjoy working with those early stage companies because it's really scrappy. There's not a lot of barriers in place to just get something done. And typically those early companies need what I have to offer. Once it gets to the point of me being a nice to have, it's just not as fun of a relationship, and it's not as effective of a relationship. And it's cool to bring something to the table that's missing. And I think that's probably the best way to break it down as to why.
Bringing something to the table that's missing. It's naming exactly what's going down in this world. And I just think the reality of recruiting is if you want to have a job in this industry, you've got to ship fast. You've got to find great candidates. You've got to work quickly. You've got to build processes from the ground up. You've got to know how to have the soft skills to manage a founder, know what hills to die on. I think a lot of people opine on recruiting on LinkedIn, but if you're working as a recruiting team of one or you're working as an agency partner, it's just a whole different world. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think the knowing how to wrangle a hiring manager or a founder, especially early stage working with founders, is a challenge. But I think people think of recruiting, and I know you've talked about this before, they think of recruiting as you just DM people on LinkedIn, they respond to you with a high response rate, and then you just have a simple conversation and that's it. And that's like the exact opposite of what I think what recruiting is. That's not at all what I do all day long. And that's not at all what you do all day long. That's a drop in the bucket. Most of what I feel like I'm doing is trying to get a hiring manager that's never hired for this type of role that they're trying to hire for. They couldn't do this job if their life depended on it, to understand why the people that I'm putting in front of them are or are not a good fit, or why they should or shouldn't go for certain things, right? A lot of what I'm doing in the go-to-market space is like, all right, this is my second or third go-to-market hire. We have a founding AE or we have a head of demand gen and we need something else. And it's like, all right, here's why you shouldn't hire a field marketing manager for your second go-to-market hire. Here's why you shouldn't hire a social media marketer for your first go-to-market hire. Here's who you should hire. Here's why you should hire. And telling a founder what to do is very difficult, especially because a lot of technical founders that I work with know what they're doing in a lot of ways or think they do. And so kind of disrupting that is a challenge. But
no, I'm with you. I think it's coming down to being able to understand the outcomes of a role and pattern match across the different clients and different stage companies that you've worked with. This is the silver lining, I think, for a lot of recruiters that have maybe gone out on their own, or maybe they've experienced layoffs and they've worked in contract roles, is you get a lot of at-bats. You mentioned your experience at Amazon. In big tech, you're one of maybe 1,000 recruiters doing
Literally.
rinse
Yeah.
and repeat for the same role. I remember that was my experience when I got a match at Google, and working at Google was my dream job for 5 years. And then when it finally came knocking, I was like, actually, this isn't what I want to do. I
Yeah.
don't want to be a software engineering recruiter for cloud doing the middle part of a process for the same exact profile every day. And I think the beauty of being able to pattern match is because you can see, hey, what works, but then also understanding when to bring in perhaps that person that has a background that is outside the box. So if the hiring manager is looking for ABC and you deliver them XYZ every time, you're not going to get very far.
100%.
But if they're looking for ABC and you deliver them Y or Z, after you've maybe gotten a couple of headcount across the line, they're more apt to trust you. But
Yeah.
I
Well,
think people come in with this mentality of delivering that outside the box profile too early.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just in any customer relationship, it's really understanding your customer's pain point, your hiring manager's pain point. What problem are they really trying to solve? And not expecting them to be the ones that know the solution. You're supposed to be the one with the solution. It's when I go to a mechanic, I don't know what's wrong. Like, can you fix it for me? My expectation on him is to tell me what's wrong and to fix it for me. Right. And so I think learning to position yourself and earning the trust to position yourself as somebody that when they come to me with this abstract definition of what they think they need or what they think the problem is, knowing how to read between the lines and then having the trust to tell them, hey, I hear what you're saying. I hear this. Here's what I'm hearing from you. And here's what I believe is a problem. And here's what I believe is a solution. And when you say that to them, the goal is for them to trust you. Be like, okay, like Cameron or Brandon has this track record of seeing my problems and delivering effective and efficient solutions. And so regardless of what I think the solution's supposed to be, if he's saying that's a solution to my hiring problem, I'm going to trust him to deliver that. Like that's the goal.
What do you think signals that a hiring manager or founder is ready to hire?
For me, especially on the agency side of things, like when they take me seriously, and that's not pump my tires, take me seriously. I don't take myself very seriously, but I take what I do seriously and I take hiring seriously. And so I think when they are being intentional with giving it time, when they're showing up to meetings with me on time, right? Or with candidates on time, when they're responding efficiently and quickly, like all of those things are small signals, and they're the busiest founders in the world are going to be intentional with their responses and their engagement with things they care about. And so to me, you really value hiring and you're really ready to hire, you're going to be quick about it. You're going to be responsive. You're going to be efficient, and you're going to take feedback seriously. You're going to hear constructive feedback through a lens of I want to get better, and you're going to ask questions and be curious yourself with your external partner or your internal recruiting team to figure out like how can we do this better and how can we get better. If you're brushing all of those things off, I would argue that you're not.
We see a lot of conversation online in the recruiting internet about process and rec ops. And there's a time and place for structured interviews. There's a time
Yeah.
and place for data and reporting. There's a time and place for automated candidate stage pass through journeys. Time and place for ping and hiring managers with automated notifications in Slack. But at the end of the day, like in early stage hiring, the hiring manager, the founder, all they care about is if the next person on their calendar is the person they want to hire.
Yeah.
That's been my experience.
100%.
When you think about all of those things that make a great recruiter that I just listed
Yeah.
within rec ops and building systems, what do you think are the one or two things that an early stage recruiter or an early stage company needs in order to get hiring?
It's a great question. I think when you get it wrong is when the right hires and the right candidates have to bow to the system of rec ops. So it's like rec ops is the priority versus the right candidate being the priority. And so that at the same time, my tendency, especially as a small agency owner and the admin and operations being my biggest weak point, right? I'm not strong in those areas personally. That's why I didn't like Amazon. I didn't like the big org recruiting because it's like I didn't enjoy those things. And that was like the bane of my existence. But if I just totally schlep those things off and ignore them, I'm just not going to be good at my job. I'm just going to be trash. I'm not going to be worth my salt. So I think prioritizing, like from a rec ops perspective, I think the most important thing is prioritizing a good scheduling process and a fast scheduling process. If you can get that right, I think you've taken care of a large portion of the problem. The biggest issues that I see is efficiency with scheduling and getting things on the books for next schedules. if it's delayed any amount of time, you're losing,
Yeah.
especially early stage.
I love that you call that scheduling because I'm obsessed with scheduling. It's just a fascinating problem to solve. And I think the reason I'm obsessed with it is because it's so fundamental to the process. You and I recruit the same ways for the same types of companies. And in my experience, what early stage recruiting looks like is you schedule the interview with the founder or the panel team. You confirm with the candidate at 7 p.m. at night, and they're in New York, and the founders are in SF. And then the founder says at 6 p.m. Pacific time, hey, I actually got to move this time. So you're back on the phone with the candidate at 9 p.m. Eastern, and the interview is supposed to be the next day at 9 a.m. Pacific. And you're confirming, there's all this back and forth. There's calendar management, there's calendar blocks. There is no white space in that Tetris problem to solve for that a lot of scheduling software leverages. And I think the reason I'm obsessed with it is because people talk about like agentic recruiting and being end to end. There is no agentic process that can do what I just explained. Candidates don't use agentic AI in their iPhone. They don't use agentic AI for their Google Calendar, for their lifestyle operations. I don't know. Why do you think scheduling is so important? And do you think that's a future we're going to see in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's like the missing context is life, right? That's where agentic AI misses in a lot of areas, especially for scheduling life, is it just misses life. Like you just mentioned, it's like it doesn't know that the candidate has a haircut that it forgot to put on its calendar. It just knows in its head because it's the one that made the call, right? It misses those things. And I don't know that scheduling software will ever really get it right. I feel like recruiting tools are just doomed from the start to just be almost good. I've never there until this ATS that I just started using. I've never worked with a recruiting tool where I'm like, man, that's awesome for much more than a few months before it just starts to break, right? Or it doesn't properly scale. I think a large part of it too is it prioritizes, a lot of these tools prioritize the hiring manager schedule over the candidates.
Yeah.
And so it's like what the problem you just described is a founder or a hiring manager that is prioritizing their schedule over the person that they're talking to. And I think if we treated candidates like clients from a hiring manager perspective, if you viewed the candidate schedule like it was a customer, an important customer, and you prioritize their schedule first, you would see much better results from your recruiting, just your recruiting experience in general, because your tone towards them would change, but then also the efficiency in which things get on the books. If your prospect says, hey, I can either meet tomorrow or in 6 weeks, you're meeting tomorrow, right? You want to do it sooner rather than later, but we treat candidates like the exact opposite.
I think what you just described, Cameron, is the difference between large company hiring and early stage hiring. Is in early stage hiring actually is a priority. That
Has to
person
be.
that is
Yeah.
hired to do the job is business critical. At the end of the day, I don't think any one hire made in big tech or a large company is business critical. And yeah, there's a human on the other side of that job title, but that's what fires me up about early stage and startup recruiting is because you get to hire people who make an impact,
Yeah.
and that impact is exponential. One of the things I didn't really believe in was like the 10x engineer. And
Yeah.
now I'm starting to believe that for how software engineers are able to do so much more with agentic AI. I'm excited about the future of these tech companies because I don't think they're going to be 1,000 or 5,000 people. I think the future household tech companies are going to be like 100-person shops.
100% agree.
And there's not going to be any HR presence. There's not going to be an in-house recruiter. There's not going to be an in-house HR BP. All of the great PEOs outsource the business critical functions of HR today as it stands. And this is why I'm excited to see folks like you, because those household tech companies in the next couple of years will rely on great search partners for specific business groups. So to see you niche down and be like, yup, go to market recruiting agency for seed to series B, you're in your swim lane. That's exactly what companies are going to need moving forward.
I think I talk to a lot of recruiters about kind of that principle where it's like I have companies reach out to me to work on roles, or the companies reach out to me that just aren't in my lane, that I don't really want to be in my lane. And I decline work, not because it's like, oh, look at me, I'm declining work, but because it's like I'm focused on my lane. and I'm going to stay in my lane. And it's not that I'm not open to expanding what that looks like or changing what that looks like, but where I feel like my skills are best utilized, my strengths are best utilized, where I feel like I have the most value to add to my clients is specifically with seed to Series B AI startups for go-to-market recruiting. That's it. And I'm a terrible tech recruiter. I don't enjoy that. I did that for 6 months. That was my first recruiting job in 2015 or 14. And I'll never do that again. Maybe the times will change in the future. Yeah, niche down, and that's where it's at, dude. That's where the value's added. That's where your strengths get sharpened like crazy, and you bring the most value to your customers that way.
What do you like about recruiting go to market, whether they're marketers, customer success, or just straight up sellers?
The BS meter, man. You can just tell with some people. You can tell when someone's lying to you because I've done not all the roles, but I've done a lot of those roles and I've been around it long enough to where when someone says something a certain way, I'm like, that doesn't sound right to me. Or I can dig into, just with my strengths, I can dig into what they're really saying. Tell me a little bit more about it. And when they say, oh, is that such and such company this time? I'm thinking to myself, I don't know about that. Or they claim they did certain things at certain organizations in certain times. And because I've been in it long enough and I've been doing the same thing long enough. And because of, in my opinion, the BS meter, it's like you can really suss out whether or not someone's telling you the truth. I can't do that with tech. When someone's telling me they can code certain things, I guess I have to just believe you. Right. And there's assessments and tools for that, but I can do that right out the gate on the call. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And you get to work with people that you enjoy and trust. That's a huge piece on the go-to-market side that is, I'm sure they're on the engineering side as well, but I think it's just exaggerated a lot more in the go-to-market space.
I agree. I have recruited a ton of folks on the tech side, and it's awesome to learn.
Yeah.
I just enjoy the personalities of go-to-market folks, having done a lot of the jobs myself too. And I think a piece of great recruiting is understanding human motivation and behavior. I think a great recruiter can be really successful by just having an encyclopedic recollection of pop culture references and understanding
That's
how to
my jam,
connect
dude.
with somebody.
Yeah, that's my jam. Percent. That's like my favorite thing in the world. That is. I think if I could re-answer that question, if why go to market, I would just say people. I just genuinely love the people in the space. I love just talking shop about anything. You bring up a topic that doesn't seem like I would know anything about it. I probably know something about it, and I probably can talk to you about it all day long and just enjoy the conversation.
So true.
If it's interesting to you, I'll be interested in it and I'll enjoy it.
Like Cameron, are you wearing a Freenode cloth shirt?
You know, I'm not. This is a double RL shirt. This is double
Damn.
RL, and I'm double RL too. I've got some double RL jeans on too. I'm bougie. But I do have 3 or 4 of those Freenode cloth shirts.
Dang. I was close. This
You were.
podcast is brought to you by Ralph Lauren.
Yes. Yes, it is.
No, I love the idea of being able to connect with folks because Cameron, like you and I literally met on the internet because you were like, oh, I know what pants you're wearing from 2019.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, that's what recruiters do all the time.
Yeah.
And we pretend we don't. And this is one of the fatal flaws in recruiting right now is we index so heavily on mitigating certain biases and having all of this data around hiring and having really structured processes. The reality is like candidates, they vibe check companies, they vibe check recruiters, they make decisions that are a little bit more heavily indexed on a gut feeling. We've all
100%.
made career decisions ourselves as recruiters. Like we know this to be true, but we ignore it because it's not popular to say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of attention on inclusion, which is very important, but we're bypassing the reality that when you call a stranger up and you're pitching them a job, you want to get to know them, you want them to lean in, you want them to trust you. So much of trust and understanding how to influence human behavior comes down to that vibe. And I don't know. I go back and forth on this a lot, but I think at the end of the day, like we've all got those stories of I connected with this candidate in some cool way and they wound up taking the offer.
I think when you're able to just be yourself as a recruiter, it allows candidates to, what I would maybe say is let their guard down, kind of let their walls down a little bit and really open up to you about whatever's going on in their world, right? Like I pretty frequently have candidates share what's going on personally in their lives, not because I'm asking, but just because the conversation allows for that if they feel like they want to. And that to me is the pinnacle of inclusion. Like I'm including you and who you are into this conversation. And I'm getting exposed to just you as an individual. And it allows me to understand like what's going to motivate you. I tell candidates all day long, don't take that job. This isn't a
Yeah.
good fit for you. Not
Yeah.
because they're not good or because they couldn't succeed, but I'm like, okay, you're telling me that work-life balance is your key. You've got 3 kids, you just got married, or whatever the case may be. You really want to make sure that you're filling the blank. You're pouring out these personal details. Well, I got a hiring manager that says Monday through Friday, 6 to 6, kind of minimum. I'm thinking this is a disaster for your personal values and your goals
Mhm.
and dreams and desires for the year. Don't do this. So it's
Yeah.
I think just kind of being personable and that recollection of random stats. Like, I'm a denim head, like we talked about. I love pop culture. I talk a lot. I think about all these like little niche references of the early 2000s and being a millennial, the hardcore scene. Did you ever play a game called Dinky Bomb?
Dinky no.
Dude, or do you remember Homestar Runner and the Strong
Oh,
Bad and all
yeah.
that? Yeah, like all that stuff. It's kind of the same vein. I love it, man. When you can just kind of have fun as an individual and just be yourself and call those things out, it allows candidates to feel like they can just open up. And then that's when you get the truth too. You find out the truth about what's going on with candidates' work and their backgrounds and all that stuff.
Dude, I am with you. I'm a dad. Make people cringe all day long with my terrible dad jokes. And the reality is like I'm nearing 40 and for a while the technical candidates I would recruit related to the internet. And what's interesting about the evolution of the internet, the evolution of social media, the rise of LinkedIn and where we're at today where LinkedIn is having a moment is like the internet is inherently a funny place. And if you can give these moments of cultural recollection of the internet on that channel with an
Yep.
audience that also remembers that, like that's the fun of recruiting on the internet. I know a ton of great recruiters and folks that have been on the show that like they've been recruiting for 30, 40 years before the internet. That's cool
Yeah.
too. I've recruited profiles that are not digital and they're like machine operators in a warehouse. That's fine. My like best performing email, I think, is all your base pay are belong to us in the subject line. And if you're recruiting engineers, like they get the joke. But now the challenge I've seen is when I'm recruiting 25-year-olds, like sometimes they don't get the joke or
Yeah.
they don't have the context on the internet. So it's like, oh man, I'm like old and crusty now and I got to figure out new ways to relate.
That's the interesting thing is like I go to this coffee shop across the street from my house or my office like 3 times a day. And a buddy of mine and his wife own it. And it's a bunch of like just 20 somethings. And they're so fun and kind, but they always say things. I'm like, what'd you just say? What was that? And so I'm like picking up lingo from like the kids across the street that I'm almost 20 years older. And it's like, that's keeping me relevant, dude. I kid you not. I'll hear things that they say all day long. I just learned what looks maxing was.
I heard about this too.
Yes. Yeah. Look at that. Look at us just being relevant. And I no joke, I was talking to a candidate about 2 weeks ago. He's 24, 25. Just placed him actually. And I was like, yeah, don't
Congrats.
worry. Thank you. I was like, don't worry. You won't get mobbed. And he's like, how do you know what that is? He got the joke, obviously, because I made it. It was funny. And he laughed. He's like, I'm surprised you know what that means. And I was like, look at me being relevant, learning about it from the kids across the street at the coffee shop. So I think being interested in whatever is going on in the world and just culture in general, even if it's out of my age range per se, I'm not like obsessed with Gen Z culture, but I'm aware of it and I'm paying attention to it because those annoying Gen Zers are about to be the next annoying millennials, which I currently am, right? Like they're just that crop is coming up and they're going to be the most ideal candidates or they're going to be the one that everyone is trying to get a hold of. And if you compare your tenure of recruiting with your awareness of what's important to them culturally, you'll win.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because I remember I think it was 2022 or it might have been 2021, the number one reported job for Gen Z was corporate recruiter. That was their dream job.
Really?
And the other four in the top five were marketing roles. And
Yeah.
the through line is
Yeah.
storytelling. I think that's probably changed now because I don't see a lot of Gen Z recruiters and that whole like path to 100K tech job from home in your slippers as a recruiter is gone. That's
Gone.
just
Yeah.
no longer the reality. But a few years ago, like recruiting had a moment. And I think that's really cool because I want that next generation to come along. I think the threshold to break through is a little bit higher. And maybe we'll see folks come from those sales roles or come from those customer success roles. And then maybe
Yeah.
they'll get into a go to market recruiting role versus getting a recruiting role at age 23 coming out of school. But I'm excited for the next generation of recruiters because recruiting has done so much for me in my career and it's been so fulfilling and it's something that I didn't really see coming. What do you think is like good advice for early career recruiters right now?
I would say stick it out. I've really enjoyed what I've done over the last decade plus, and I've had a lot of younger people come to in my world, be like, what do you do? I think I should try that. And I'm like, totally fair. I think anyone can do it. In theory, it's not impossible. It's not even necessarily hard per se. I would say it's more laborious and frustrating than it is hard, right? The task itself is not hard. It's just so labor intensive and it's very frustrating for a myriad of different reasons. But if you can stick it out, it's worth it. It wasn't worth it in year one for me to stick it out. And it wasn't really worth it until I would honestly say year 5. And it doesn't have to be that way. I don't think most people's arc needs to be as slow as mine was. My first recruiting job, our ATS was a yellow legal pad. We weren't allowed to keep things in a system. I had created like an Excel spreadsheet, and my boss made me delete it and watched that while he watched, so I couldn't steal his candidates. It was very odd. We made candidates come into the office, write out applications. We took our notes in writing, and then we'd fold them in half and keep them on this dish drying rack on our desks. And when we had when there's a new job order, we'd shout to the office and then we'd walk over. I've got this candidate. Here's what it is. So the fact that I stuck it out blows my mind. But if you can stick out the first couple years of recruiting, that's like my biggest piece of advice because it is incredibly fulfilling. Once you find your groove and your rhythm, find what kind of roles you enjoy working on, find what kind of people you enjoy having conversations with. And that advice, I think, goes across the board for any job. But if you can stick it out and find your niche, whether it's big or small org, it's go to market or tech, something in between, hard to fill roles, whatever. If you can do that, then it's an awesome career, man. I've really enjoyed it. It's been very fulfilling.
One thing I think about in my career, I've done it for 10 years, and I've always had the dual remit role. It's always been just a lot on my plate outside of recruiting. Even when I worked for a publicly traded company, it was still a very small corporate office, and I was doing a lot of hardcore HR work, like true HR work, compensation analysis, doing a ton of employer brand and recruitment marketing. I was the point person to manage the recruitment marketing budget while also working a rec load and supporting 50 plus stores as a regional recruiter. And I, at the time, didn't realize that I was like doing all these cool projects outside of the remit of a traditional recruiter.
Yeah.
And when I think about sticking it out, like you'll find that passion, you'll find that direction to pursue. And your direction to pursue is really interesting to me because from what you just described, it sounds like you came up in an agency. That was your first
Yeah, that's my
foray into recruiting.
first. I made a joke earlier that I got fired into recruiting and I had gotten fired from a sales job, not performance related, for a pretty funny story. And I went out to the parking lot and I called a company I'd interviewed with, a recruiting agency, and I started the next day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's just, it was a very scrappy, old school recruiting agency. My boss and his co-founder were both in their 60s at the time. And they'd been recruiting for 40 plus years.
And then you went in-house and now you're back out on your own. I think the agency hustle is focused on the fundamentals. If you can recruit on a yellow legal pad or if you can recruit with a spreadsheet and not rely on tools, like you'll be successful. The only thing I need is a data enrichment provider and my phone to work that day.
Yeah, we didn't even have a data enrichment provider. That was the best part is we would scan Craigslist and different job boards, figure out the company names, find the company's public listed thing, call and ask for the hiring manager, and then just pitch them on the job right there. And then candidates, we would just cold call candidates. We each had our own yellow book. I think back on that now, I'm like, what was I doing? I was driving an hour and a half each way, wearing slacks and a button up, which is like the least favorite thing on the planet. I had to fresh shave every day. In my interview, my boss told me, he's like, you need to come back tomorrow shaved if you're going to work here. And I was like, all right, whatever, man, that works. So it's just
the job.
Dude,
it wasn't like because recruiting was sexy. It was like you needed to pay bills and pay rent.
Yeah, for sure. It's just funny when I think back on how far I've come or the journey that I've had in recruiting. It's very comical in a lot of ways, but I'm so grateful for it. I wouldn't change any of it. And I think if I can get through that yellow legal pad phase, then I can make it anywhere.
We're men of a certain age. Do you know Tom Sachs, the designer, and he does those cool Nikes?
Yeah.
I was watching a video and he's got this mantra right now. Tom has great mantras, but he's got this one mantra where it's like the reward for doing good work is more work.
Yeah.
And like he's doing this whole kind of like Gen Xer thing through his content series right now for a younger audience that is interested in buying products from his design studio. And it's really cool to hear because I love work ethic. I love doing hard shit. When
Yeah.
I think back on the things that allow me to be successful today, it comes down to just the passion of the craft, and the journey is the destination type shit.
Yeah.
What are those pieces of hard work and those inputs that make a great recruiter?
Man, that's such a good question. I think a lot of recruiters struggle to just get started. There's always these excuses. We tell ourselves the excuses before the rec even begins. The hiring manager's hard, or that profile doesn't exist, or we tell ourselves these stories to justify kind of half-baked work right before it even begins. So it's like, oh, we don't have fill in the blank, or the comp is low, or the locate. No one wants to be in the office 5 days a week, or so we tell ourselves all these stories so that when we go and we put lazy effort out there, we're validated. We're good, right? And I think the hardest thing to do is think of it through the hiring manager's lens. They're asking for this profile, and it's my job to go find it. And then let time tell you whether or not it's findable, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm speaking to myself here, of course, right? I can't think of how many times I've been like, oh, doesn't even know what he wants, or she's
Yeah.
a terrible hiring manager, or he's a whatever. And I give myself the excuse before it even begins as to why I can't find it. And I'm like, nah, dude, you're being asked to do something. Go do it.
Yeah. If somebody has a negative experience at a restaurant, they'll tell 10 people about it, but if they have a great experience about it, they'll tell one or two. And I think that's the same with recruiting is we get caught in these mental feedback loops of recruiting sucks, hiring managers sucks, it's hard, they don't know what they want. And we see this negativity bias. The greatest power skill for a recruiter is optimism. The next great candidate is one phone call away. How do we bring more of that optimism into a ruthless process that is rinse and repeat, that is very output driven? If you hit up 100 candidates a day or talk to 10 candidates a day, over time you will get better and those numbers will naturally go down so that you can have more precision at the top of funnel
Totally.
to be where you are, to
Yeah.
go out and launch your agency, be successful, and be able to serve up 3 to 5 great candidates for a hiring manager so that you're able to maximize your time. And at the end of the day, pay your bills and make a living.
Yeah. But you can't make numbers better that don't exist. So I want a 7-to-1 ratio on my placement, my submittal to fill, right? When I would use maybe in recruiting for myself, right? If I'm going to send 7 candidates to a role, I want one of them to get hired at least, right? That's an ideal average ratio. Okay, if I haven't submitted 7 candidates, how the hell do I expect to get a placement?
Yeah.
If I haven't reached out to 100 people, how do I expect to have 22 of them respond? If I haven't, so it's like you can't complain about the bottom of the funnel if you haven't done anything at the top of the funnel. And
Yes.
so I think realizing that in order for you to actually have results, you have to have input and you have to know your data. And so it's like if you're just going to be out there winging it, that you might get a win here or there to keep you afloat long enough to keep complaining. But if you're not actually looking into your data, here's how many conversations I had last month. Here's how many submittals that came from that. Here's how many interviews that came. Here's how many placements I made off of that. Whatever. If you don't know those numbers, then you're not going to have any framework to kind of place upon yourself for the next month, right? And so it's like anytime I'm having lackluster results, I ask myself, like, do I have any expectations? Typically, I don't. If I have poor results, I typically don't have any expectations on myself. And if I don't have any expectations, then I have nothing to meet or unmeet. When I have expectations, then I can look at myself and be like, all right, I expected this of myself this week, and I didn't produce any of that. Therefore, I failed. Or I'm halfway through the week. I expected this. I'm not halfway there yet. So therefore I need to up my volume. And so I think this kind of comes back to the hard work piece though, too. It's like you can't put hard work towards no work. You have to put hard work towards a hard project or towards something. And so it's like, it's very elementary and it's very basic, but it's like, dude, so many people, it's like, I'm grinding. I'm like, how many calls did you make last month? How many candidates did you talk to? I talked to 7 candidates last month. You're grinding?
Yeah.
7 candidates? You can do that in an afternoon.
Yeah.
Might be exhausting, but that's grinding. Nah, man, you're playing yourself. Get out of here. Go do something easy if you want to put in easy work. But if you want to be successful on your own or be successful at a startup, then you have to work hard.
Totally.
Sound like a boomer, but you get the point.
Love it. I love the hard work. I think we should not shy away from it because if we're going to be successful as recruiters, we need to have thick skin. And
Yeah, dude.
The only way to do that is get a lot of at bats, get
Yeah,
told no a lot,
a lot.
have hiring managers tell you the candidates weren't a fit and you suck at your job.
Yeah,
Like
been
when
there.
you think exactly,
Been fired. Yeah, dude. I've gotten myself fired from a singular submittal. If this is your first sub and that's what you think it is, then we're not going to be a good fit. This is company in 2018. It was great. Felt awesome.
what is it like being out there on your own, getting new clients, doing business development on
Yeah.
one side of the desk while also doing the placements and delivering on the work on the other?
Yeah, I was always my first agency. I left after a year and followed an old coworker to start their own. And I was like, I'm never leaving here. COVID happened, went to Amazon, hated that. Went to another agency and I had an even better commission structure there. And I was like, I'm never leaving here. I don't know why I would. And then I left and it's been easier than I thought. And I don't mean that like being on your own is easy, but I had always told myself I'll never go out on my own. I don't have what it takes. I'm out there. I don't have good admin skills, which I still don't. I don't understand accounting software, all these barriers in my head. And now that I'm on my own, I'm like, all right, this is simpler. Is maybe a term that I would use. It's more simplistic than I thought. It's not as complicated as I expected it to be. And so while BD has been definitely something I've put an effort into, I think I've encouraged other recruiters on this all the time. My number one driver of revenue and business development has been LinkedIn and posting on LinkedIn. All but one of my clients since July of 2024 have been inbound. And prior to July of 2024, I had never once had an inbound customer ever. I'd never even had a company reach out and ask me a question, let alone become a customer. And that's all been through just commenting, connecting, posting on LinkedIn and doing so in a way that adds value. You see a lot of recruiters online just posting, which is fine,
Yeah.
but not adding any value to their ICP or to ideal candidates, right? And for me, I'm myself very much, and I definitely I have fun with it, but I try and at least have 80% plus of the things that I'm saying or doing or commenting on or posting, whatever videos I'm sharing or posting be something that my ideal candidate or my ideal customer profile can pull value from. And if
Yeah.
I'm not doing that, then I'm asking myself, why am I actually saying this or why am I posting this? And I typically just delete it.
That's such a good barometer. Your content is so good. I think I saw a video of you on a skateboard doing a skate walk and talk.
Yeah. Yeah. I skate to work, or I'll either skate or walk to work most days. I live in the Northwest, so if it's dumping rain, I'll drive. And that was the first video I think I ever posted to LinkedIn was me skating to work last summer or spring and talking about a role I was working on.
So cool.
And people enjoyed it. And I was worried that I think this is the other thing. I think I was worried people wouldn't take me seriously. And I'm sure there's definitely people out there that wouldn't take me seriously. The older I get, the more I realize I'm like, just turned 35. And
Well,
so
happy birthday.
thank you. Thank you. I'm like, man, I just don't care. I enjoy skating and I've been doing that for almost 30 years, right? I started skating when I was 6. Yeah, 6. So it's like, I've been doing that for 30 years. Why would I hide something that's so valuable to me? We've gone back and forth in the DMs and comments before. I grew up in the hardcore scene in Seattle. And it's like, why would I hide that? I'm not like sharing that from the rooftops every day of every conversation, but I have hiring managers that were at the same tour that I was my first show in 2003. That's cool. Like, and it
Yeah.
was a cool talking point. I was telling you earlier, I spent 30 minutes on a call with the VP of sales recently talking about a pair of inline skates that we both had in like the early 2000s. I'm
It's
going to
awesome.
be myself and talk about things that I care about and that I enjoy. And if I see that stuff, I'm going to engage with it. But I'm
Yeah.
not, at the same time, I'm not trying to shove my personality down everyone's throat. What I'm trying to do is just make sure that the content that I'm posting is adding value to my customer or to my ideal customer or to ideal candidates on LinkedIn. Otherwise, go to Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that authenticity is cool. The world of work is different. You mentioned being in button-ups and slacks and being clean shaven. And I think the world of work has loosened up. Like,
Yeah.
you go to a recruiting conference and important people and they're in Jordans and they're walking around Vegas and it's obviously they're trying to be comfortable at the conference because you do so much walking in Vegas and I spend a ton of time on the conference circuit. But like when I see that kind of stuff, it's oh yeah, these are real people. They care about
Yeah.
that stuff. Getting off the internet and getting in person. Ultimately, that's the way I see successful reps starting
Yeah.
conversations with their
100%.
prospects at trade shows is being able to strike up a conversation with a stranger as they walk by. And it's funny you mentioned being in the hardcore scene. One of the best recruiting minds in our generation is Erin Matthew, and she open sourced like how to be a tech recruiter, this amazing blog years ago. And Erin talks a lot about elder emo culture and all of
Yeah.
these great music references. And it's here we are, like millennials are creating their own kind of corporate work culture. And I'm excited about that because if I show up at a conference in a tie-dye shirt and cowboy boots, I'm just being me and people relate to that. Like whenever I talk about the Grateful Dead online, I'm always surprised by the volume of people who have a starchy photo on their LinkedIn profile will comment on something about the Grateful Dead. And
I love it.
I'm usually 6 days a week in a Grateful Dead t-shirt, which of course I am today, but
I love it so much.
it's like, I love that stuff. And now I'm not afraid to do it. But I think early 20s, I was like, oh, let me hide my tattoos. Let me be more buttoned up and emulate Gen X culture.
Yeah.
But I think what Gen Z will see, and hopefully Gen Alpha, like our kids, will be like, yeah, you can have more of a human experience at work and have more of an integration versus two separate personalities.
I think what you're saying though too is that time of my life, driving in an hour and a half each way to the city, wearing slacks and a button up, riding my Harley into the city, right? Like being rough around the edges, but learning how to be polished in the right environments was really important. And I think my concern for some of especially the post-COVID Gen Zers is we're in high school or college during COVID, or in college during COVID and kind of entered the corporate workforce right then. It's like it kind of didn't get that. You need that season of being polished. You need that season, and the only way you get polished is by getting knocked around, right? Like you don't get polished by being taken care of. You get polished by rubbing up against stuff that doesn't feel good. And that's where the reps of, hey, now you need to put in your reps. You need to pick up the phone. You need to learn how to earn your stripes. And if you're not earning your stripes, if you're not doing those things, then it's like you're not getting the chance to be polished. And if you don't know how to be polished, then I think you'll forever struggle in the workforce. Regardless of if it's requiring you to be polished, I think knowing how to be polished is insanely beneficial and crucial to long-term
I love
success.
that. It's this idea of context switching, understanding your audience, being able to read a room, but
Yeah, dude.
fundamentally
Yeah.
getting back out into the world,
Yeah.
being able to reach out your hand and talk to a stranger. Cameron, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.
We'll have to do this again soon. Thanks so much for such great tips. I've learned a ton from this convo. Any last advice for folks out there?
Man, if you're a candidate looking, keep your head up. You got this. If you're a solo agency or you're a small shop recruiter, start posting on LinkedIn. It is going to be your most valuable resource. And if you are a hiring manager, don't work with recruiters that can do everything. Just work with the specialists. They're better.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just true. So that's it. That's all I got.
Sweet,
Everything's
dude.
going to be okay. That's my other piece of advice.
There's no recruiting emergency room. There's no recruiting jail. Like at the end
No.
of the day, we're getting people jobs and
It's not that
delivering
big of a
value
deal.
to shareholders.
Yeah, it's just not that big of a deal. Nothing's that serious, especially in recruiting, man. It's cool. Take it seriously in a good way, but you'll be all right. So that's my final piece of advice.